Have you ever tried to hold back your tears and felt them rise anyway? Maybe it was during a simple conversation, maybe someone said something small, not even cruel, and suddenly your eyes filled with tears. And in that exact moment, you asked yourself, why am I like this? Why do I cry so easily? Why do others stay calm while I fall apart? Is something wrong with me? What if I told you that crying easily is not a weakness, but a window into how your brain, your nervous system, and your emotional world are wired? What if those tears are not a flaw, but a sign of depth, empathy, and a highly responsive emotional system? Today, we're going to explore the real psychology behind people who cry easily. Not the stereotypes, not the judgments, but the science, the personality traits, the childhood patterns, and the hidden strengths behind those tears. Because by the end of this video, you might see crying in a completely different way, and maybe even see yourself differently too. Crying is one of the most natural and universal human behaviors. From the moment we are born, tears become one of our first ways of communicating with the world. Yet, as we grow older, especially in many cultures, crying is often misunderstood. Adults who cry easily are sometimes labeled as weak, overly sensitive, or emotionally unstable, but is that assumption accurate? Or does crying easily reflect something much deeper about personality, brain function, and emotional processing? People who cry easily often have heightened emotional sensitivity. Emotional sensitivity does not mean fragility. It means that the nervous system responds more intensely to emotional stimuli. When something sad, touching, overwhelming, or even beautiful happens, their emotional system activates quickly and strongly. Tears become the natural release of that activation. Rather than being a sign of weakness, this response often reflects the depth at which they experience life. From a neurological perspective, crying is connected to the limbic system, particularly the amygdala and hippocampus, which are responsible for processing emotions and memories. In some individuals, these areas may be more reactive. This does not mean something is wrong with them. It simply means their brains are wired to register emotional meaning more intensely. When emotional input crosses a certain threshold, tears become the body's regulatory response. Empathy is another key factor. Many people who cry easily score high on measures of empathy. They do not just understand another person's feelings cognitively. They feel them almost as if the experience were their own. When they see someone suffering, hear an emotional story, or witness injustice, their mirror neuron system activates strongly. This creates an embodied emotional reaction, and crying becomes a byproduct of that deep resonance. Personality psychology also offers insight. Within the 5-factor model of personality, individuals who score higher in neuroticism tend to experience emotions more intensely, especially negative ones such as sadness, anxiety, and vulnerability. However, high neuroticism is not inherently pathological. It reflects emotional responsiveness. When combined with high agreeableness or openness, it can produce individuals who are emotionally aware, compassionate, and deeply reflective. Importantly, crying is not always about sadness. Many people cry during moments of intense joy, gratitude, relief, or awe. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as emotional overflow. When emotional intensity exceeds the nervous system's ability to contain it, tears help discharge the buildup. This explains why someone might cry at a wedding, during a reunion, or when achieving a long-sought goal. The tears are not about pain but about magnitude of feeling. Early childhood experiences significantly influence how adults relate to crying. Children who grow up in emotionally supportive environments learn that expressing feelings is safe. They are not shamed for tears, instead, they are comforted and validated. As adults, they are more likely to express emotions openly, including through crying. In contrast, children who are punished or ridiculed for crying may learn to suppress their emotional expression. They might appear stronger, but internally they may experience unresolved emotional tension. Biologically, emotional tears differ from reflex tears. Emotional tears contain stress-related hormones such as cortisol and adrenocorticotropic hormone. However, it is important to distinguish between healthy emotional crying and crying associated with psychological disorders. If someone cries persistently without clear triggers, experiences prolonged low mood, fatigue, hopelessness, sleep disturbances, or loss of interest in activities, it may indicate depression or an anxiety disorder. In such cases, crying is not just emotional sensitivity but a symptom of underlying distress. Professional support becomes essential. People who cry easily often possess strong emotional transparency. They do not easily detach from their internal experiences. This authenticity can strengthen interpersonal relationships because others perceive them as genuine and emotionally available. Emotional openness fosters trust and intimacy. However, in environments that value emotional restraint such as competitive workplaces, these individuals may feel misunderstood or judged. Cultural context plays a major role in how crying is interpreted. In some societies, emotional expressiveness is viewed as sincerity and warmth. In others, emotional control is associated with maturity and strength. Gender norms further complicate this issue. Men who cry are often judged more harshly due to social expectations around masculinity. These external pressures can create internal conflict for emotionally expressive individuals. Interestingly, research on emotional intelligence suggests that those who cry more easily may have higher emotional awareness. They are often skilled at identifying, labeling, and processing their emotions. Emotional intelligence involves recognizing feelings, understanding their causes, and responding appropriately. Crying can be part of this process. It signals acknowledgement rather than avoidance. There is also a connection between crying and attachment styles. Individuals with secure attachment tend to express emotions more freely because they trust that others will respond with care. Those with anxious attachment may cry more due to heightened fear of rejection or abandonment. Meanwhile, avoidant individuals may suppress tears as a defense mechanism. Thus, crying patterns can reflect deeper relational dynamics. Another psychological dimension involves sensitivity to stimulation. Highly sensitive persons, a concept explored in sensory processing sensitivity research, often cry easily because they process stimuli both emotional and environmental more deeply. Loud environments, intense conversations, or emotionally charged situations can quickly overwhelm their nervous systems. Tears become a release valve. It is also worth noting that crying can be socially functional. Tears signal vulnerability, and vulnerability can elicit support. Evolutionary psychologists propose that crying may have developed as a mechanism to strengthen social bonds. Visible tears communicate need, authenticity, and non-aggression. In this sense, crying is not only personal but relational. Tears signal vulnerability, and vulnerability can elicit support. Evolutionary psychologists propose that crying may have developed as a mechanism to strengthen social bonds. Visible tears communicate need, authenticity, and non-aggression. In this sense, crying is not only personal but relational. Despite these benefits, some individuals who cry easily struggle with self-criticism. They may interpret their tears as a lack of control. This self-judgment can amplify distress. Learning emotional regulation strategies does not mean eliminating tears but creating balance. Techniques such as deep breathing, mindfulness, grounding exercises, and cognitive reframing can help manage overwhelming emotional surges. Mindfulness practices are particularly effective because they teach individuals to observe emotions without being consumed by them. When someone learns to notice the rising wave of emotion, they can choose how to respond. Sometimes that response includes allowing the tears to flow. Other times it may involve pausing and stabilizing. The goal is flexibility rather than suppression. Therapeutically, crying in safe environments can be profoundly healing. Many people experience breakthroughs in psychotherapy sessions that involve tears. Crying often marks moments when defenses drop and authentic feelings surface. Rather than viewing tears as regression, therapists frequently see them as signs of progress and emotional processing. Ultimately, crying easily is neither inherently positive nor negative. It is a characteristic shaped by biology, personality, early experiences, and culture. In many cases, it reflects depth, empathy, and nervous system responsiveness. In some cases, it may signal unresolved pain or mental health challenges. Context determines meaning. In a world that often rewards emotional detachment, those who cry easily remind us of our shared humanity. Tears connect us to our vulnerability, our capacity for compassion, and our ability to feel deeply. Instead of asking why someone cries so quickly, perhaps a more meaningful question is, what are those tears trying to communicate? When understood through a psychological lens, crying becomes less about weakness and more about emotional truth. For many individuals, tears are not a failure of control but an honest expression of inner experience. And in that honesty lies a profound strength.